Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Shakespeare with you on the 19th of January, 2023. I'm here with psychic medium, remote viewer, and all-round great person, Liz Cross. How are you today?
All-round great person. You're so nice. I have to give you credit where credit's due. We're going to call a hit on that on your prediction of Yield Robot, which went down in a matter of days, just like you said it would. And yeah, so well done, Mr. Shakespeare.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was going to go so quick. I knew it would go down, but I didn't. I mean, so the only issue is, was it pulled by the instigators? You know, the people that wrote the code originally. Did they panic and get out, or was it part of what they call a rug pull, where they designed? Or did they and themselves get hacked by a third party and the scammers got scammed, if you like? So, but anyway, there are so many of those around. Please avoid them. Right. We're talking today about the debt ceiling. How interesting.
It's got a lot of people panicked over here. They believe that this could be the reason the stock market turned yesterday. It was green for quite some time, and then it suddenly went into the red, and then everybody was speculating, oh, it's this panic over the debt ceiling. Will they raise it? What's going to happen? How are we ever going to pay for all this? And so there was a lot of fear generated in this debt ceiling drama that was being put out by the media yesterday. Right.
Well, the best way to look at the debt ceiling drama is think of it as kabuki theatre. That's all it is, theatre. It's done to install fear in people, if you like. They're arguing over it. They've never not raised the debt ceiling. There is no limit to what the US government, in theory, can borrow, because the debt is issued as credit by the Federal Reserve System, and they have the only elasticated system on the planet, and there is no limit to what they can create. So the debt system, the so-called debt ceiling, is really a misnomer. There is no ceiling to the debt. So if there was really a ceiling to the debt, your congressmen and senators would go back to you and say, right, all the programs, all the free handout, all the free money, all the things that we said we were going to do for you, we're stopping, we're cancelling. There's no more money for absolutely anything. Now, there's not one politician in America, or in fact on the planet, that will ever do that, because they know that they will be voted out of office come next election, if not before, if you like. So they never do that. So there's never a stopping to the spending, okay? But the US government doesn't spend actual money as such, because we live in a fiat system. All it does is it spends the credit that the Federal Reserve System monetizes for it. It's very clear in the US Constitution who can issue dollars, who can issue the currency. And it's not the Federal Reserve System, okay? People need to go and look at, in America, they need to go and read the Constitution and find out who actually can issue it. You will find it's the government and Treasury and Congress is the only one that can do that, okay? When the Federal Reserve System came in 1913, late December, read Creature from the Jekyll Island if you don't know how it all happened. But essentially what they did was they invented a system of credit. The Federal Reserve System issues credit. It does not issue dollars. It's not allowed to issue dollars. It never issues dollars. It issues Federal Reserve notes, which people call dollars, and it's nicknamed dollars and all this lot, but they're ferns, Federal Reserve notes. That's what they are, okay? There is supposedly only about $2 billion, actual dollars, issued by the Treasury in existence. All the rest of the so-called dollars are credit. They're credit dollars, if you like, okay? Now, of course, they can be spent. I'm not saying you can't spend them, they can. But the notion of a debt ceiling is just a joke. It will always be raised. There's no limit to what they could raise it. Yeah. But if they want to stabilize the market, if they want to cause a bit of panic or do anything, there can be all this kabuki theater over it. Yeah. You have to understand that the federal debt, the debt that the US government owes, will never, ever, 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 ever be repaid. It's not designed to be repaid. The interest is the only thing on it that has to be paid. Now, if the Federal Reserve System raises the interest rate, which is what they're doing at the moment, then that will increase the borrowing costs, and that might temper down some people's expectations. All right, but it will never stop anybody borrowing or doing anything, because the underlying thing, it's not real. It doesn't exist. It's not like we owe it to ourselves or anything like that. It's not designed to be repaid. It was created out of nothing, and therefore it would go back to nothing. Okay. So all of this worry and panic and everything else is just kabuki theater. I mean, if you go back and all the so-called debt ceiling that have happened before, when have they ever stopped borrowing and spending money, the US government? I mean, when?
Well, that's true. Because as you were talking, I probed and I said, does this ever go down? And no, it never goes down. They don't know how. They don't know how. And there's no point now. It's gone so far in the wrong direction. But my thing is, even if they're raising the debt ceiling, the money has to come from somewhere.
Well, the funds come from the US government issuing treasury notes and then the Federal Reserve monetizing them, essentially.
So the money comes when people they decide to buy treasury notes.
So the US government who are the only people, the Treasury are the only people that can issue US government debt. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the US Treasury, the US government issues that, and basically they exchange. It's a very complicated, it's complicated but easy. They put it into one side of the Fed monetizes it and then issue them credit out on the other side based on the debt. Okay. Now, so far, the US government has never, ever defaulted on their debt. So their money their funds are issued at the full faith and credit of the United States government, which has so far never defaulted. Unlike, say, Argentina or Spain or Brazil or anybody else, any one of number of countries that have defaulted. Okay, the US government have never defaulted on their debt. Well, that doesn't mean they won't one day, but they haven't. They've never done it. And one of the reasons why they don't need to is that they have the Fed at their back. Yeah. The Fed literally can print to oblivion if it wants to.
Yeah, but then it makes the dollar worthless.
Of course. Yeah.
What has happened when countries cannot pay back their debt?
They default.
Yeah, but what happens to the economy traditionally?
It crashes. Because it's like if you lend somebody some money and they don't pay you back, you don't want to lend the money again, do you? Well, that's what happens. Capital will just withdraw from that country if they don't think the country is safe. If a sovereign nation doesn't pay its debt, then that doesn't bode well for a sovereign nation, does it? Yeah. There's a great book by, I think it's John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. People should read that. That's how the American institutions have basically what they've done to other countries by destabilizing their currencies and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Great Britain used to have for 200 years the reserve currency of the world. That's where Britannia rules the waves. We used to go around, invade everybody, and basically said, now you're using sterling. Where do you get that from? Us. Okay. Well, the US system is the modern version of that. Now you have to put everything in dollars. Where do you get that from? Us. So I mean, we've probed the Federal Reserve the other day. They're going to hold rates for a while. By the end of the year, they're going to drop them. So at some point, I think it was October, November or something, September, I can't remember, there was going to be some sort of pivot downwards. So, you know, that's probably the end of the pain from that point of view. I don't know. I mean,
well, when I probe the debt ceiling, it
yeah.
has a very nervous energy about it. It's like, this can't keep going on. I mean, that's what I'm picking up.
And yes, well, okay, the only way that it can not keep going on is if America does not service its debts. In other words, if it fails to pay the interest payments on, you know, on what it owes.
But surely with the more debt you're taking on, the higher the interest payments or the larger the interest payments are, eventually you're not going to be able to pay those.
Well, you can, because you can do the old thing of kicking it down the road. So let's say that the entire US debt was $1 trillion. It's not, it's a lot more. But let's say it was $1 trillion and it was due, it is due to be paid by Friday. Yeah. Well, you take out another loan for $1.5 trillion and kick it down the road for another 3 years. So you pay off one debt, okay, with another. You can't pay debt with debt, and yet you can substitute debt. You can throw it down the road. That's why if you look at the American debt since 1973, all it's ever done is gone up and up and up and up and up. Okay.
So what could we probe out of this?
Well, I hadn't told you this would end up being something like this. There wouldn't be that much to probe because all this pretty much is all set in stone. I mean, this is how our fiat system works. Yeah. Nixon took the US off the gold standard in 71. Most people think that was when he did it. He didn't. He took it off temporarily in 71. It was finally taken off in 73. And if you look on the St. Louis Fed's charts, they're the ones that do all the data stuff, by the way, the St. Louis Fed. Right. If you look at that, all that's ever happened then is inflation, inflation, inflation. You had virtually no inflation in America up until then. From the end of the Second World War till 71, 72, 73, you had no inflation of note. And then after that, that's all you've had. Because people want free things. People want all sorts of stuff. Politicians promise it to them. The debt has to then, where do they get the money from? Well, they borrow it, they borrow it, they borrow it, they borrow it, and do all these things, you know? Nobody, no household runs the way the US government or any other government runs. They wouldn't be able to do it, you know?
Oh, no, no.
You know, if you get to your household and you want a new car, but you can't have a new car because you don't have the money, you turn around and say, well, we can't have a new car because we don't have the money. Or we can't buy that bigger house because they don't have the money and no one will lend it to us. Those are the checks and balances that are in place for people, you know, the you and I of the world. Those things don't apply to government.
Oh, God. I mean, it's a pretty scary thought, though, to me. That
well, it is because the US dollar has lost about 97% of its purchasing power since 1913. 97% of its purchasing power. So it's only buying 3% of what it did, you know, 100 odd years ago. Yeah. So that's not good. Yeah. People get excited when prices rise, but in a lot of cases, it's because the currency is devaluing. You need more of them to buy the same thing. You know? Bankers love inflation. They need inflation. They hate deflation. I like to pay less for things, not more. So, you know, I'm going the opposite of what bankers want. Bankers want inflation, so end up paying more of, because then the fiat system that we have today exists only if it expands. It has to expand. It has to find more people to take on more debt, to expand and expand. The biggest, scariest thing on the planet for bankers is deflation. And yet, that's what all of us should be hoping for. We all should want deflation. Yeah? We all should want to buy things cheaper, not pay more for stuff. We want to pay less for something.
Yeah, but things rarely ever go back down. That's the problem.
It's because of the inflation or the access to cheap debt. Yeah, that's why they've had 0% interest rates for so long. And that's why Powell is trying to do something about it now. Okay. But I mean, the access to almost free money, where do you think all the stock prices and the house prices and all these inflated asset prices have come from? Cheap money. You can borrow at nothing. There's no real incentive not to borrow when the interest rate is like 0 or just over, you know? And bear in mind that, you know, they don't lend you anything. They only create it when you agree to pay it back. But that's how this fiat system works, you know?
So how do we trump the system? how do we, you know, overcome the system? Just by being independently wealthy?
Well, you as an individual can't overcome the system. The system is too big, too powerful, too pervasive for any individual to overcome. However, what you can do is you can step outside the system in certain ways. So, for example, gold and silver, for example, physical gold and physical silver, and Bitcoin, and there are other cryptos as well, but these are all outside the system. They're what they call outside money, whereas anything sort of dollar denominated, pound denominated, you know, your Roths, 401ks, they're all things inside the system. Okay.
And they're heavily controlled, because you and I were having a little discussion prior to hitting the record button, and we both agreed that $2 million, while it sounds like a lot of money, it really isn't a lot of money. And if you are, say, 15 years old today, and you invest in a Roth IRA, which is the individual retirement account that the government allows things to grow within this account tax-free, based upon calculations of putting in $6,000 to $6,500 a year, you may reach a maximum amount of like just over 2 million, maybe 3. Now, bearing in mind that's for a 15-year-old, because that's the legal age of where they could start, or certainly it was, and start saving into a Roth IRA, and that's it. When somebody, that 15-year-old, becomes 65, $3 million is going to be nothing at the rate we're going.
Right, but one of the things that the system likes you to do is to persuade you that the best investments are in the system. Yeah. So if you go to an independent, so-called independent financial advisor, an IFA or whatever they're called over there, they will always tell you about products and things that are in the system. So you get your money and your wages or whatever, and then you spend it at the company store, which is, in other words, a dollar. If you're in America, a dollar-denominated thing. Yeah. Whereas if you buy Bitcoin, for example, or gold, what is the price of Bitcoin or gold? Well, in America, it might be one price. Canada, it might be another one. In Bulgaria, it might be another one. It's not denominated in just one thing. But if you buy a US, you know, something or other that's denominated in dollars in the US, that's what you're stuck with. So what they always want you to do is they always want you to invest in their own system. Yeah, that's why you never get an independent financial advisor advise you to buy Bitcoin or anything like that. Well,
right.
maybe the odd one or two do, but they don't earn any commission out of doing that. They only get incentivized by people keep their money in the system. And then if the system has a problem, you have a problem. Yeah. But if you keep your money outside the system, there's a Credit Suisse analyst called Zoltan Pozsar, very clever man. He used to be I think he might have even worked for Goldman for a while. He's very good. And he came up with this sort of concept of inside and outside money. You know, and the best way you can protect yourself is to have as much outside money as possible. Yeah. So things outside their system. So if the system crashes or has a problem, you know, you can step away from it. Yeah. That doesn't mean you have to go and live in the jungle, live off grid, or do anything like that. It just means you have to try and keep your wealth outside of their system. Now, of course, all the time they want you to put money in their system, the pension funds, the 401ks, the this, the that, you know. Well, I'm not saying they're bad, but if anything goes wrong, there's a problem. Yeah. If the US defaults on its currency or on its debt, how does that affect if you've got 2 Bitcoin in your wallet? It doesn't. But if all your money is in their system, in a bank account or in their investments or anything like that, well, you've got a problem, haven't you?
That's very insightful.
There's a great website people should look at, which I'll click on now for you. It's good fun, this US debt clock. This is what shows you the debt that goes up all the time and how much it goes on, and, you know, probe that and see how it's doing.
This is what I probed the debt, and it's like a nervous wreck. It just doesn't believe this can go on forever and ever and ever. What would you like to know?
Well, actually, this has been going for a long, long time. So is this fully representative of the current situation? Because as you can see, it's live, you know, the numbers change all the time. But I mean, it's been around a long time. Is it real? Looks real. But I mean...
No, it's not.
No? Okay.
I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
Well, I mean, just look on the left-hand side. The U.S. national debt is $31.5 trillion. But I mean, is that correct? I don't know. It might be.
It's a lot more than that.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's probably not taking into account derivatives and all sorts of add-ons and stuff. But yeah, okay. But I suppose it's just a visual thing about how money is just, you know, blown all the time. You know, it's
look at this part where it says 1960 53.34%, 1980 34%, 2000 59%. It's in red, and now 121%. What is that about?
So that's the debt to GDP ratio. So that's the gross domestic product compared to the debt. So in other words, 1960, according to this, it was half. So if the if the GDP of America was 100 billion, then the debt would be 50. Now, if it's 100 billion, the debt's 120 billion.
But that can't be allowed to continue. I mean, at some point, we're going to go bust, right?
Only if America stops paying its debt.
But who do we owe the interest to? Is that those the people that buy the treasuries? Is that who we owe the interest to?
Well, yes, the treasuries are notes bearing interest, so you always have to pay. You know, there's various treasury bonds available. I think 1 month, 3, 6, a year, 2 year, 5 year, and I think 10. And there might be even more than that. The 10-year treasury is the most liquid debt instrument on the planet, and it's also the barometer that a lot of people look at to see how America is doing. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is owed on government issued bonds. Yeah, and bonds, of course.
Wow.
But a lot is owed to the Federal Reserve System as well.
What a confusing nightmare. So what is the way around all of this? Just, I guess, buy Bitcoin. I don't know.
Well, there is no way. There is no way round it, because nobody, not one politician, nobody is going to say, I mean, America is spending money like, because it doesn't, there's no fiscal responsibility within, well, not just America. I mean, most countries are exactly the same. There are very few, that try and maintain anywhere near a balanced budget, very, very few. And they're very, very small, none of the big countries. I mean, England is no better. I mean, Japan
Wow.
is no better. They just spend but they're spending credit. You just get in unlimited credit slips, which you then spend. No one thinks about, which politician ever thinks about paying anything back in the public's purse? Nobody.
Hmm.
No
Yeah.
politician will ever turn around and say we should stop doing this. I mean, look how much money they've sent to Ukraine that's all gone up in smoke or wherever it's gone. 100 billion, 200 billion, who knows? I mean, could that not have helped American homeless or something? I don't know. I mean, it's just money, it just goes.
Wow.
How much did they spend? How much did America spend in Afghanistan while they were there for 20 years? Was it 2 or 3 trillion? I can't remember.
It was a lot. It was a
Right.
lot of money.
Right. So the debt on that is owed by the American people.
Hmm.
Sorry, the interest on that is owed by the American taxpayer.
So we're the ones paying the interest. That's wonderful.
Well, yeah, of course you're paying the interest. That's where your taxes go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was great. So thank you. I mean, but it's a real understanding for those people that don't know. And the fact that you have such a grasp on the American system and you're not even American is quite remarkable. And again, congratulations on your Yield Robot hit. I didn't know it was going to come around so quickly, but there you go. It did.
No, I didn't know that. I can't claim any hit on that. I mean, I knew it would go at some point, but I thought, if they, I mean, as I said to you before we started recording, we have no idea. We don't know who did the hack. Was it literally a third party hack where the scammers got scammed? Because the biggest Ponzi's like BitConnect, they went on for a couple of years and they generated hundreds of millions. I mean, you wouldn't stop this, and lots of people made lots of money out of it. Not at the end, but in the initial stages. The way it works is simply this: there are no 720% returns. The money goes in, pays the money going out. It's simple as that. As long as more money goes in than is withdrawn, then it's not a problem. Until one day it is, and there's always one day it is, because what happens is, it's not that the people want to take out too much, they're greedy for the returns. It's that people find out they're not interested and they stop putting money in, and that's what kills them. That's what brings them down.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for our education this morning. I really appreciate that. And we'll hopefully see you all on the Discord.